Hello, everyone. Welcome to Sincerely Spirit. I'm Erica VB, and I created this series of spiritual Q&A, if you will, to sort of help those that are starting their spiritual journey, have had their spiritual awakening, to get a better definition, understanding of things they may encounter throughout their journey and development. So last week we went over the difference of spirituality versus religion. If you missed that episode, please subscribe and like my YouTube page. I'll have all the information at the end of where I am, of what social media I'm on. But you can go back to Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube and Facebook to see that video. Today, because recently on some social media conversations, I've seen people sort of discussing mediumship and evidential mediumship, evidential psychic readings, and just trying to understand the difference between all of this, what is appropriate for them. Perhaps they're curious about uh, developing their own intuition and mediumship abilities. So today I thought we would focus on the umbrella of mediumship and then the things that sort of fall under that umbrella, the categories, if you will. So what is mediumship? Essentially, mediumship is the ability of an individual to act as the go-between living and the spirit world. So mediumship is the communication of the person to the spirit world. Okay. That's it in a nutshell. Underneath that mediumship is something called channeling. Now, channeling has two sort of subcategories to it, if you will. Essentially, channeling is the blending of someone on the earth plane with a divine energy, being, spirit guide, or even other entities. So that's one part of it. The other part of it is a lot of times you'll hear the word channeling in trance mediumship, okay? Now, trance mediumship is a little bit different than other kinds of mediumship, and we'll get into the definition of that. But just know that when I use the word channeling, that means that I am channeling spirit, I am channeling other entities, or I am channeling divine energy, my spirit guide, my higher self, etc. It's the communication part of what a medium does. Okay, or how the medium does it, if you will. Think of it as like a radio station. We're going to keep dialing in until we hear the right music that we want, the right song that we want to hear. That's what channeling kind of is. So, types of mediumship, what do they include? You will run into on this pathway called mental mediums, which is what we see most of and how most mediums practice in today's society. So what is a mental medium? Mental mediums is where they allow spirit to manipulate the senses of the mind and body of the medium. So we're talking, you'll hear a lot about clairs, clairvoyance, claircognizance, clairaudience. So this is like you're seeing, you're hearing, your taste, the knowing, the feeling. What a medium will do is allow spirit to utilize their mind and body, those senses, to communicate with for the client, sitter, or collective, if you will. A caveat on the mental medium, though, and actually kind of overall, is that all ethical mediums should be practicing where they are releasing any judgments, societal, cultural, or religious ideologies and beliefs so that they can be as pure of a vessel for spirit to communicate through. I can't stress that enough. True, real mediums that are here for healing will absolutely put aside any judgments, beliefs, or ideologies that they have or have been taught to give their client, their sitter, the collective, the most purest experience that they can have, and the most purest connection that they can get, okay? It's very important for you to understand that. All right, so that's mental mediumship, and that is what you're most likely going to encounter on how a medium is communicating. There's something called physical mediumship. This is a little bit more obsolete. We don't see it that often. And this is where the medium can manipulate the physical energies and systems around them. So if you're in a session with the medium and doors start knocking, or you see spirit materialize or an object materializes, that's physical mediumship. It's the ability of the medium to utilize the physical energies and manipulate it with spirit's help to create a tangible existence, if you will, or tangible object. And they can do this in the crowd, around the public, in the room, for an individual or collectively. Okay. But like I said, we don't really see a lot of the physical mediumship. It's very hard for spirit to work through us that way, because our energy is a little bit more dense. Not a little bit, a lot more dense than what their energy is. So the mental mediums is actually a great way for spirit to communicate with their loved ones here, and for divine source, angels, etc., to utilize as well. We're a little bit more comfortable and flexible that way. So now that we have like the two different types of mediumships that you may encounter, if you will, or the channeling ways, if you will. I like how I did that. Let's go into the types of mediumships you will find under mental mediumship. Now remember, mental mediumship is just the way that spirit is utilizing the medium's body and mind to communicate and give the information necessary. So the first one I'm going to talk about is the trance mediumship, and this is essentially the blending of the medium and spirit, and it usually isn't done on a one-to-one basis. So usually when somebody is in trance mediumship, I like the word blending, but I think all like evidential mediumship, psychic work, it all blends spirit with you. So in trance, you're sort of allowing spirit to take over your senses, if you will. You're removing your consciousness, if you can, from being alert to allowing spirit to take over and give the messages. And usually in trance mediumship, the messages are for the collective rather than the individual. You may see the medium change in how they communicate, how they talk, the words that they're using, their hand gestures, their body movements, etc. So in trance, we're really just allowing spirit to come super, super close to our energies and sort of take over for the time that they need to get the message out. When you think of trance mediumship, some relate it closely to channeling as well. And when you think of that, you can think of Daryl Anka and Bashar. You can look them up. Daryl Anka channels Bashar, but he's also in a trance state because Daryl is not himself at the time. He allows Bashar to sort of take over to get the messages out to the collective. You can also think of Esther Hicks. She's really well known as Abraham Hicks throughout the community, a lot on law of attraction. So if you're interested in that kind of thing, you can check that out too. She gets into a sort of a channeled trance state and allows Abraham Hicks to come through with the information for the collective. Okay, so that's trance mediumship connected to channeling. I don't practice trance mediumship. I like to have a little bit more control over what I'm doing. I may develop into that, I don't know, but right now that's not what I do. And then you have evidential mediumship. So, and this is what we're most seeing in today's spiritual communities in terms of the mediumship. Evidential mediumship, essentially what they do is they take evidence, they pull in evidence from spirit to validate and support that, one, they are communicating with your loved ones who have passed on, and two, that those energies do not die out. They're just because we can't physically see them doesn't mean that they aren't still with us. So that's one of the biggest purposes of evidential mediumship. As humans, we need that tangible information. So and this is what I'm an evidential medium. So if grandma comes in and I say I'm communicating with grandma, well, how do you know I'm communicating with grandma? So I'm going to pull in evidence. I'm going to talk about grandma's personality, what she looked like, perhaps how she passed, any illnesses she had, the bonding connection that you had with the person who has passed on. That's the evidential part. It gives us that gumption that we need as humans to say, oh my goodness, yes, this is what happens. And then, there's the levels of difficulties or complexities that mediums, the more they do it, can get into with like getting names and birthdays and stuff like that. So that's evidential mediumship. It is the ability of the medium to pull in the evidence to validate and support that they are communicating with your loved ones, but more importantly, to tell you that yes, our energy does live on even after we have passed from this earthly plane. So that's sort of evidential and trance. Those are the two big ones you'll probably run into. Another thing you'll run into in the spiritual community in terms of mediumship is something called animal communication. Now, what is animal communication? It is exactly as you hear it. It is a medium who practices communicating with your pets who have passed on. It also includes mediums who will connect to the energy of your living pet and give a reading that way as well. So when you see somebody that has animal communicator in their title or next to their name, this means that that is what they do. They not only can communicate with the living, with people, but they can also communicate with animals. Most mediums can communicate with animals. Probably all mediums can communicate with animals. However, there are mediums that this is specific for them. This is what they do, and it's part of their repertoire. I am also an animal communicator, so I can connect with your animals who have passed on, and I connect with the energy of the animal who is living. And then it can go on. We can get even more in depth under more umbrellas under each of these, but like I said, I want to keep this as basic as possible. So those are the types of mediumships, if you will, that you may encounter on your journey in your discovering of the spiritual world. Okay, now let's talk about psychics, because you're going to see people that have psychic medium next to their name, intuitive medium next to their name, and what does all that mean? So it's really sort of interchangeable. Okay, it's probably just going to come down to the mechanics and how they approach their sessions and how they do their readings. So somebody who just has evidential medium next to their name is probably just going to format their sessions and readings so that they're just pulling in that evidence. They're just validating and supporting. They're bringing in all this great evidence to say, yes, grandma's still around you, and yes, this is what grandma wore, and this is what grandma said, and perhaps there's going to be messages within that evidence or at the end of the session. So that's an evidential medium's job. In their practice, they are going to most likely format their sessions around the evidence that spirit gives them for their client. Okay, what is a psychic medium? So a psychic medium, for my interpretation, what I've encountered and what I've seen, because I'm pretty certain I'm probably going to get some backlash on this, they're very similar to an evidential medium. However, they're relying more on their formatting is going to rely more on the psychic, intertwining psychic with evidence. Okay, so it's going to be about where you are now. It's going to have messages from your loved ones, probably more messages from loved ones than it is evidence. It's probably going to be more based on where you are right now, who you are right now, and bringing in information that way. I do want to put in here the difference between a psychic and like an evidential medium. Okay, so psychic mediumship, psychics are usually known as people who are tapping into your energy where you are right now. They will dive into the past, and a lot of times we think of a psychic as somebody who's predicting the future for us. When you see psychic medium, they're not necessarily predicting the future for you per se, unless that is how they format their sessions or who they are as a medium and what they do. I love how one person said it to me, because they have psychic medium after their name, and they're like, they delve more into life path as part of their sessions with their clients. So it's an intertwining of communicating with those that have passed on, that we were close to, our loved ones, and also sort of communicating with your higher self or your spirit guides for where you are right now and life paths and choices ahead of you. That's how I like psychic medium to be described, if you will. An intuitive medium is pretty much the same as a psychic medium. They're going to do the same thing, connect with loved ones who have passed on, but they're also going to utilize their intuition to read into the messages and perhaps evidence that are coming in for their client, or the collective, if they're doing a gallery reading or something like that. So that's kind of how I visualize that. I do feel like they're more interchangeable than they are. I think the only thing that separates the mediums, if you will, in terms of mental mediums and what they're doing, is if it's evidential. All right, so if it's strictly evidential, that's what they're doing, that's what they're bringing in. And like I said, a lot of this just has to do with formatting and how the medium communicates and works with spirit for their clients. Okay. So that's sort of the difference between like psychic medium, intuitive medium, evidential medium. Okay. A psychic reading in general is literally the medium connecting to your energy for where you are right now, going into your past, and perhaps predicting future events. Okay. That is all a psychic reading is. If you're sitting with a medium and they're saying this is an evidential mediumship reading where I'm connecting with your loved ones, and all they do is talk about where you are right now, where you could be going, and where you're coming from, more than likely you're not getting an evidential mediumship reading, you're getting a psychic reading. That's a big difference to know. Now, is that to say that in the evidential medium, the spirit's not going to talk about where you are right now? Absolutely not. But in an evidential mediumship reading, they should be talking about evidence of the existence of the spirit they are communicating with. And in a psychic reading, they should be talking about where you are, choices you've made and how you got here, things that you could predictability happen in the future. Okay. Now, I did see someone ask a question on social media about evidential psychic readings, and what is that? They had no idea what that is. My understanding of an evidential psychic reading is that they are going to pull evidence from past events. They're going to pull evidence from where you are right now to validate that, yes, they are tapped into your energy. So what does that evidence look like? That evidence could be personality, how you think, how you move, how you act. It could be, okay, I see you had trauma from your mom, or you had trauma from your dad, and this is how it's affecting you now. So they're going to pull in things that can prove that they are tapped into your energy, which will help validate and support the information that they're giving you. And that's really what the evidence does for us here in the human form. And then intuitive readings. So you have things like your intuitive readings, I kind of put into, they are psychic. Psychic and intuitive, I would actually interchange as words. But when I think about intuitive readings, I'm also thinking about like utilizing tarot cards and oracle cards, pendulums, etc., things of that nature, where we're allowing the tool to assist and maneuver how our intuition needs to go. So that's kind of how that works. I think in the next session, the next video that I make, I'll go over like tarot cards, oracle cards, pendulums, if you guys are interested in having that kind of information, ways that help us to develop and grow our intuition, and sort of how to feel what our intuition is too. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Just mediumship is just really the ability for us as a person, as an individual, to communicate with those in the spirit world. And that includes other entities, that includes our angels, our spirit guides, our higher self. And when I say higher self, I mean our soul. And those that have crossed over, including our pets, not just our loved ones. So this is Erica VB from Sincerely Spirit series. You can check out, I'll have it come up on the screen here, my email. If you're interested in a topic that you want explored, send me an email. Any questions you may have, you can obviously put it in the appropriate place for the social media this is on, or you can send me an email and we can converse that way. Just so you know, I do offer spiritual guidance. I am not considered a life coach, but I do like a spiritual Q&A session. If you're interested, check out my website. All the services and information's there, and we can go through for your own personal development and growth. Okay, well, what step do you need to take next? Okay, well, why are you feeling this way, and how can we work through that? Okay, so you're drawn to that. What draws you to that? So those kinds of things for spiritual guidance. Okay. It is a little bit of life coachy, but it's more about your spiritual growth and development. So again, thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you all have a blessed day. Please like, subscribe, follow on all of my social media pages, and I will probably put out a video around the same time next week. All right, enjoy yourselves and talk soon.